بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وقدوتنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Welcome Saturday morning to beginning classical Arabic. Today, inshallah, is going to be a fairly easy lesson, but it's something new, so that's exciting. Real quick, following up with something that we had talked about last time, we talked about the root adana. And there's a whole lot that Ibn Faris writes about this root, Hamza, Tha, and Nun. We had kind of realized that it's both the root of udhun, which is ear, and then idhan, which is permission, and then adhan, right? Or adhan, which is the call to prayer, mu'adhin, the one who makes the call to prayer. And so Ibn Faris, he says that al-hamza wal-dhal wal-nun aslan mutaqariban fil ma'na. He says that this root, this three-letter root, hamza, dhal, and nun, is actually two roots in one. Each of them has a very, very similar meaning. أحدهما أذن كل ذي أذن. The first has to do with ears and hearing. Okay. والآخر العلم. And the second one has to do with knowledge, right? Which makes sense because in the Hadith Qudsi of the Wali, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, آذنته بحرب. Right? Whoever shows enmity towards a wali of mine, a close, pious servant of mine who I am close to, then announce to him, adhantu, I have announced to him that basically we're at war. So adhantu, basically I have informed him, right? So it has to do with knowledge. وعنهما يتفرع الباب كله. So it says, and from there come all the derivations of this word, from permission to the call to prayer, all kind of derive from. Exactly. Yes, proclaim. Very good. Very good. That's a very nice word to translate. All kind of are derived from these two main roots. And there's a lot, actually, in this particular book. Maybe a paragraph for most entries. This particular entry, he has over 2 pages written about it, so you can tell that there's a lot going on there. But just a snippet, these sorts of introductions are useful for how you're thinking about Arabic. And so even if they're a little bit, quote unquote, above your level, you're not ready to look through a dictionary of roots like Ibn Faris's, but it's turning you on to kind of imagining how to interact with Arabic, how to study Arabic, and how future studies of Arabic will go, inshallah ta'ala. So we have reached the 8th lesson. And the idea behind this lesson, I'll tell it to you now up front, is that we're just simply going to be using our demonstrative pronouns in a slightly different way. Previous to this, we had used our demonstrative pronouns هذا, ذلك, هذه, تلك for purely is statements, right? In English grammar, we have verbs that are 2 categories, right? The verb to be, which talks about identity, and then pretty much everything else. So we have been using demonstrative pronouns هذا, هذه, ذلك, تلك to make to be statements, to make statements about identity only, okay? And we're still going to be making statements about identity, but we're going to make things a little bit more specific. Before we were identifying objects and people. Who is this? من هذا? هذا طبيب. This is a doctor. Right? Ma hada, what is this? Hada kitabun. Okay. So it presumed or assumed an ignorance or a lack of knowledge about what the thing was. And the answer was giving us information about what that thing was. Okay. Now it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to add a word. We're still going to use hada as our mubtada, but we're going to add a word into the mubtada, a noun, a definite noun, and it's going to change what we're saying. So let's look at just the first line here before we get into the conversation. هذا الرجل تاجر. So if we break this down as a sentence, this is a sentence. Our mubtada is هذا الرجل. Now we have a compound mubtada. We have two words in the mubtada. And this is the khabar here, tajir. It's still a statement of identity, but we're no longer merely asking as to what a thing is in the most simple sense. Now we're saying, for example, this man is a business person or a trader or something like that, right? So that's the only thing new going on in this lesson, other than a couple new vocab words, is that we're adding a definite noun after our demonstrative pronoun to be able to say things like this man, this boy, that car, this, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's a fairly simple concept. The only thing you have to look out for is running together. Like here we have a hab shamsiya, right? So we have to be careful how to pronounce, whether we're pronouncing the lam or not. And then we just have to make sure that this has one dhamma and not two, to distinguish the fact that it is the subject and not the predicate. So without further ado, let's just get into it. We'll go line by line. So first, Muhammad Mu'tasim, can you read the first line for us?
هذا الرجل تاجر وذلك الرجل طبيب.
Very good. Can you translate that for us?
Is this man a tajir, a shopkeeper? This man is shopkeeper, and that man is a doctor.
Fantastic. Excellent work. Exactly right. Brother Awesome, next line.
اسم التاجر محمود واسم الطبيب سعيد.
Excellent pronunciation. Listen to how he knew how to put the kasra in ism. Ismu tajiri. Oh, sorry. You translate it.
The name of the merchant is Mahmoud, and the name of the doctor is Saeed.
Yes, very good. So notice how we have, I'm going to draw a line for the sentences because we have two sentences. This is our mubtada. It's our subject. It's a compound mubtada. It's mudaf mudafun ilayh. Ismu tajiri. What are we saying about ismu tajiri? It is Mahmoud. Very good. Next, Brother Sa'id. Next line.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هذا البيت للتاجر وذلك البيت للطبيب.
Excellent. Can you translate that for us?
This is the house of the merchant. وذلك. And that is the house of للطبيب.
Yeah, very good. The doctor.
The doctor, no.
You might affectionately call Tabibi. Yeah, Tabibi. Good. So again, notice how, mashallah, we've accumulated many different types of things to say. Here, up here, we were just saying what it is. هذا الرجل تاجر. Now, down here, we're saying هذا البيت للتاجر. We're talking about possession. We have a compound mubtada with a demonstrative pronoun. We're going to show which one we're talking about to avoid any ambiguity. Let's say we're standing on the street and there's many houses in front of us. You can't simply say al-baytu lit-tajiri. Which house? There's all these houses here. What are you talking about? هذا, you can point, you can say هذا البيت للتاجر. This house is the merchant's. وذلك البيت للطبيب. And that house is the doctor's. Could we have also used a possessive construction there? Yes, of course. Anytime when you use li, you could have used a possessive construction instead of it. I mean, technically, li is a possessive construction, but I know what you mean. So very good, very good. In language, you develop multiple ways to say the same thing, right? This is part of fluency. If you only have one way to say something, you're not very fluent, right? Everything you have to say, you sound like one of those robots. Everything is kind of, okay, I've got my فعل, فاعل, مفعول به, فعل, and that's good. That's where you start. But the goal is to develop multiple ways to say the same thing. And that's when you're starting to get into a higher level of fluency. So our sister Masarrat pointed out very astutely that we could use a different possessive construction to say something, if not exactly the same thing, then very similar. What if we had said, for example, and this is what we had done before, هذا بيت التاجر, right? This out of the way. This is what the formula that we had kind of been moving in before. In this sentence, our mubtada is simple, only هذا. And our khabar is now compound with a possessive construction. بيت التاجر. This is the trader's house, or the merchant's house. Over here, we've done something a little bit different. هذا البيت للتاجر. Now we've shifted bait away from the possessive construction that is tied to the merchant, and we've put it closer to the demonstrative pronoun. هذا البيت للتاجر. We put it in the subject, and we've simplified our khabar. So in which instance would we choose one or the other? هذا البيت للتاجر seems to me as being more responding to a sort of question if we're already talking about the house, right? Let's imagine again, we're on the street. You point to this house. You like it. It's nice. It's got an arbor with some trees, some vines, mashallah, nice big bay window. You say, whose house is this? The more appropriate response would be هذا البيت للتاجر, because you're already talking about the house. Now, let's say that you were walking on a brisk fall day through a neighborhood and you were talking about your friend, the merchant. And you were just talking about how, yes, he lives in this neighborhood somewhere around here. And then you turn the corner, you come across his house. You say, هذا بيت التاجر. This is the trader's house, the merchant's house, because you were already talking about the merchant, right? Now, neither of these is mutually exclusive. In either situation, it's correct to use either construction. However, this construction here draws more attention to you pointing at the house as if there was a previous conversation about the house, because it has separated the house from the possessive construction and attached it to the demonstrative pronoun. This. Whereas over here, it would be more suitable to if you had been talking about the merchant. He's your friend. And you happen to stumble across his house because this here is now attaching the house to the merchant and not to your demonstrative pronoun. And Allah knows best.
I have a quick question. Yeah. Can you just quickly explain why there's lit tajri? Why they put li there before tajir?
Fantastic. So Lee, we had talked about, and maybe I think might have been absent, is our second device to make possession. Okay. Our first device to make a possessive construction was this right here. Two words, both of them isms, baytu tajiri. The first one has no alif lam, has no tanween. The second one has to be majroor. That was our first way to say possession. House of the merchant. Our second way was to put a lam with a kasra in front of it. This lam is called lam al-mulkiyya, the lam of possession. And it is something that approximates the apostrophe, right? Lit-tajiri, the merchants, the tajir's house. And the work that it does on the word is that it makes it majroor. The word, the noun that it is attached to, has to be majroor. Sister Masarat, you had another question?
Yeah, actually, the question came up because when you were explaining the difference between the two ways of showing the possession, I hadn't realized actually that the one in the textbook, that the whole like the hadha al-bayt is the mubtada. I didn't realize that because all the time in the previous lessons the hadha had been the mubtada, so I didn't catch on. So I actually thought that that the hadha al-bayt is one sentence, and then like this is an addition to it, but that's not the case, right?
Very good. Very good observation. And that's a very useful way to look at it. Yes. هذا البيت is not considered a complete sentence in Arabic. For reasons that would take a little bit longer to explain, but
Is it because it's definite there's because it's what's the word? Yeah. Sorry.
Exactly, because both of them are ma'rifa. And it's simple, right? Like one to one. If you have mubtada khabar, ma'rifa nakir is the formula. If your khabar is simple. If we have had al baytu, it's like this house, right? In English, like there's no information that you're saying. Even if we wanted to say, now one could say, if they could look at this with English eyes and say, well, why wouldn't it mean this is the house, right? Why wouldn't it mean that?
Because the verb is only implied when it's the khabar.
Yes, exactly. And in Arabic, if we wanted to say this is the house, we would say hada huwa al-bayt. We would add a pronoun in there. This, it is the house, right? But that's a little bit complicated, and we'll go into that more later, the rules for when khabar can be ma'rifa and when it can't, and so on and so forth. But yes, the main takeaway is that now your entire mubtada has two words to it, hada and al-baytu. These two words make up the subject, and the khabar, the information you're sharing about that subject, is that it belongs to the tajir.
Okay, and I have one more question, which is in the first example, if I wanted to say, so what I'm saying here is that that man is a doctor. Okay, but let's say that was student, because let's say I was saying that man is a student, and then I wanted to say that student is a good. Oh, but I wouldn't need to say that because then there would be a Tama Bhuta at the end. Sorry. Okay, forget that question.
Good. Excellent job. These are very, very good questions, and they help us tease out the differences between these sorts of expressions and phrases. So thank you, everyone, for the questions. Okay, so we had done Brother Muhammad Mutassim, we did Brother Asim, we did Brother Sa'id. Sister Masarat, it's your turn. Fourth example.
Sorry. So بيت التاجر أمام المسجد وبيت الطبيب خلف المدرسة. the the um, the businessman's home is in front of the masjid, and the doctor's home is behind the school.
Excellent. So these are our two most important new vocabulary words for this lesson. Amam and khalf. Amam and khalf. Amam is a preposition of place, which means in front of. In front. And khalf is a preposition of place, which means behind. And we're talking about relative location. Because we're talking about relative location, and we had said before that languages use the genitive case to talk about relationships of location, then this is going to be the relationship between this preposition and the word that comes after it is going to be mudaf mudaf ilayh. It's going to be just like our possessive construction. Notice how amam made al-masjid majroor with a kasra. Amam al-masjidi. Khalf al-madrasati. Right? So that was why I go into the language theory, is that hopefully it helps you kind of organize things in your head. Genitive case talks about relationships of time and place and possession. The genitive case in Arabic is majroor. We're talking about one of those relationships, location, and so the next word after it is going to be majroor with a kasra. Okay, we're on to the Sheikh family. Next line.
Liman haza sayyaratu wa liman tilka. Whose car is that, and whose car is this, and whose car is that?
Very good. And I know you meant to say hadihi. You just
Yes, liman his sayyara.
very good. Excellent job. Liman hadihi sayyaratu wa liman tilka. Very good. Sister Asma, if you're there, can you do the next one?
هذه السيارة للطبيب وتلك للتاجر. This car is the doctor's and that car is the merchant's.
Fantastic. Great work. Okay. I'm going to erase all of this if that's okay. We're going to scroll down. Oh, just one more. That will go to, who do we have left? Okay, Brother Muhammad Tariq, could you do the next one?
Assalamu alaikum. هذه السيارة للطبيب وتلك للتاجر. No, the next one, sorry. هذه السيارة من اليابان وتلك من الأمريكية. من أمريكا.
Very good. من أمريكا. Yep. هذه السيارة, right? The سيارة.
هذه السيارة. Okay.
من اليابان تلك من أمريكا. What does that mean? Translate that for us.
هذه السيارة من اليابان. This car is from Japan.
Yes. Very good.
And that is from America.
Yes.
تلك من أمريكا. Okay.
Okay. Anybody have any questions at all about this previous exercise before we move on?
So, second last sentence, it's هذه السيارة or هذه السيارة.
No, هذه السيارة. This is this is your subject, right?
Yeah.
So the default ruling of the subject is that it's marfu'. Everything's going to have a dhamma, unless there's something else, right? Which is about, recognizing what Sister Masarrat was telling us, is that the big lesson of this is we're basically adding a word to the mubtada, or we're adding a word to the subject. Whereas before, our examples were simply using demonstrative pronouns. هذه بيت. Now we're saying هذه البيت, or excuse me, that doesn't make any sense because bait is masculine. هذا البيت, and so on and so forth. Good. Excellent work. Okay. Let's keep going. Now, this is going to require a little bit of reading comprehension. They're going to ask you questions about what you just read, and we can scroll up and look at the answers, no problem. The first question is, and we'll start with Sister Arum since Muhammad Tariq was the last to go. من هذا الرجل ومن ذلك الرجل? That goes back to way back to the first line.
Okay. هذا الرجل تاجر وذلك الرجل طبيب.
Yes, very good.
رجل ومن ذلك الرجل. Okay.
Notice again how this is the main point of this lesson. Al-rajulu is part of the mubtada, part of the subject. هذا الرجل. Imagine you pointing to a specific person. هذا الرجل. You haven't said anything about him yet. So the sentence is not complete. You've merely pointed him out. هذا الرجل what? تاجر. That's the khabar. وذلك الرجل طبيب. Very good. Number 2, let's have Brother Muhsin. Go ahead, read the question too. It'll be a good practice.
ما اسم التاجر؟ اسم التاجر محمود.
Okay, very good. You're correct that his name is Mahmoud. Now, I want to grill you about a minor point, because here you said Mesmut Tajiru. And then, okay, that's right. Because I was gonna, up here you said Ismut Tajiri, so I would have to ask which is it. And you're right. This is a possessive construction, the name of the merchant, and so the second half has to always be majroor. Excellent. Sister Syra, if you're there, number 3.
Masmut tabibi.
Yes.
Asmut tabibi saidun.
Yes, excellent work. Ismut tabibi sa'idun. Number 4, Brother Tamim.
من أين سيارة الطبيب؟
Good.
من أين سيارة الطبيب? Where is the doctor's car from?
Yes, excellent. Okay. So what's the answer?
Hold on 1 second. Okay, هذه السيارة من اليابان. من اليابان.
Very good. So we don't have an explicit answer here. It's implicit. It says هذه السيارة للطبيب, and then the next one is هذه السيارة من اليابان. Right. So it doesn't tell us explicitly that that's the doctor's car, but we have to infer that it's the doctor's car because they just told us that that's the one that's closest to us. However,
sorry. So here, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, it's okay. I just wanted to ask Brother Tamim one question first, because I believe
sorry.
Question. Oh, what had you said? Oh yes, in the answer you said هذه سيارتي. Is it هذه سيارتي or هذه سيارة, and why?
I think it's هذه السيارة.
Good, that's correct. But why?
Because it's in the question, it was part of the possessive. In السيارة طبيب. Yeah, it's part of the possessive kind of phrase there, but when you're answering the question, it's standing alone. It's the mubtada.
Yes, up here in the statement هذه السيارة, it's part of the mubtada. And one thing that we know about the mubtada is that it is marfu'. The mubtada is marfu' and the khabar is marfu'. All those things that we learned before, you see how they always keep coming up every single class. So what type of sentence is this? It's a jumla ismiya. What are the two types, the two parts, of jumla ismiya? Mubtada and khabar. What's the default grammatical case of both the mubtada and the khabar? It's marfu'. It has to be marfu' until something comes into the sentence that's going to change that ruling, to move it from marfu' to something else like majroor or mansub or something else, right? So your default thing, if your jumla ismiya, you know it has to be marfu'. Here it's obvious, هذه السيارة. It's right off of هذه, so it's part of the mubtada. It can't be anything else except for marfu'. It's a little bit trickier in the question, because sometimes in questions we rearrange the order of the words in a sentence. We say min ayna sayaratu tabibi. We could get confused and see that min and think, well, wait a second, why isn't sayara with a kasra? And all we have to do really is untangle the sentence. The full sentence or question would be sayaratu tabibi min ayna, right? The doctor's car is from where? However, it's more eloquent and more correct in Arabic to move up the specific part that you're actually inquiring about, which in this case is the khabar, min ayna. Sayaratu tabibi. Sayaratu tabibi min blank. That's our sentence. So this is the mubtada, and this is the khabar. What's the question want to know? The question wants to know the khabar. And so we put that first in the sentence. But it doesn't take away from the fact that sayaratu tabibi is actually still the mubtada, and therefore marfu'. Good. Sister Musarrat, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you, based on everything we've studied so far, I could think of 3 ways to answer this question, but I just wondered if they were right and whether we knew more. So one way to answer it would be to say sayaratu tajiri, where is it? Min Amrika.
Okay.
The second way would be to say as-sayyaratu lit-tajiri min Amrika. And the third way would be to say tilka min Amrika. Are these all correct?
The first and the third is certainly correct.
Okay, so let me figure out what was wrong with the second one. I said as-sayyaratu lit-tajiri. So, okay, the reason that's wrong is because I actually don't know.
Yes, no, it's good. It tests what your example did, and this is very useful, is that it tests the flexibility of these different forms. Okay, so is there any difference between using li versus using mudaf ilayh? Right? We just kind of found one because of your example. We use li for more simple statements about who something belongs to, which is not the main point of the statement you were just saying in your example. The main point was where it was from, not whose it was. So it sounds off to my ear to say as-sayyaratu lit-tajiri min Amrika. It might be correct. I would have to look into it. But it sounds clumsy to my ear because usually when we use li, we're just talking about whose is it, right? Lit-tajiri, period. It's the merchants. So it might be possible to use it, but it occurs to me, my ear, that it would be more correct to use mudaf ilayh if we're talking about something else, right? The main point of the sentence isn't whose it is, it's where it's from. And Allah knows best. That's good.
Okay, barakallahu feekum.
Barakallah. Okay, and our final, Brother Asim, could you do number 5?
من أين سيارة التاجر? Where's the merchant's car from? سيارة التاجر. Where is it? سيارة التاجر من أمريكا.
That's right. Yeah, that's what's implied from the conversation. That the merchant's car is from America. MashaAllah. Oh, mashallah, look at this. We have two more now. Perfect. So let's go back to the top and everything.
One question on so when we say it's
Oops, you muted yourself.
sorry, I said if we go up to like say it's min yabani,
yes,
or min al yabani, but we say for why won't we say min al amriki?
Very good. Because Amrika is mabni. Okay. Mabni meaning it's fixed. It's fixed. It's always going to be Amrika. It's never going to be any different. Just like, and words that end in a final alif are often this way, whether that alif is mamdud or maksur. For example, let's take the name Musa. Can you say min Musa? No, you can't. It's always Musa. Whether it's subject, object, preposition, anything, it's Musa. Same thing with Isa. Always going to be the same. Words that end in alif are always going to be like that. They're never going to change. However, Yaban, just by nature of it falling on an Arabic phonological pattern. So we have to see like Yaban is totally a normal Arabic like word. There's a lot of words that fall on this phonetic pattern. Bunyan, bunyanun marsus in Surah As-Saff. And many, many other words that follow this sort of pattern. Because it follows Arabic phonetic patterns, it's treated like an Arabic word. And so there's going to be al-yabanu, yabani, yabana. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Okay, question. Mabni only in haraka, right? Why does Japan have a definite article and America does not? That comes back to something we said about the names of countries, even in English, right? What do we say? Are there any countries where we say the Netherlands, right? The Netherlands, right? We would never say Netherlands. It wouldn't be correct. Or, I mean, you guys probably know better examples than I do. But the same thing exists in Arabic. So in different languages, we use the before place names, depending on various factors, what that word originally means, or other reasons that I am not even aware of, right? As Sudan. In America, in English, we say Sudan. In Arabic, it's the Sudan, as Sudan. China, right, in Arabic is as-Sin, right? And there's many others, al-Yaban, but others are not. And as to exactly why, I don't have a quick answer for that. But there's definitely this phenomenon in multiple languages where some place names, some country names have a definite article before it and some don't, which is very, very interesting to think about. Good question. Anyone else? Any questions?
Are all countries masculine?
Are all countries masculine? No, not necessarily. Like, for example, the official name for America, America is like the slang name, right? Like America. It's not the United States of America. If you were to write out in Arabic, Al-Wilayat Al-Muttahida Al-Amrikiyya, right? The United States of America, that's feminine because state is feminine. And so everything follows that. If you want to say Great Britain, or the United Kingdom rather, excuse me. Al-Mamlaka. Mamlaka, kingdom is feminine. And so Al-Mamlaka, what do they say? Al-Muttahida, the United Kingdom, right? Even Saudi Arabia is technically in Arabic, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Al-Mamlaka Al-Arabiyya Al-Saudiyya. right? So everything is feminine. So it doesn't,
And the word united, it has the same root as tawheed.
does. اتحاد, يتحد, وحد, from one. It's I think the fifth bab of Sarf. So is there Ameriki in Arabic? Explain your question, Sheikh family. I don't understand the question. Oh, Amriki. You mean like
Yes. Is there anything like Amriki in Arabic?
there is. Amriki is someone. So this moves from the nation to the national, right? The person who is from America is Amriki, right? Or if it's a female, Amrikiya, right? Just like there's Saudi, Sudani, Sudaniya. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yes.
Yes, there is. Yes, and we'll get into that. How to add the ya to the shadda in order to demonstrate something kind of belonging to that thing. Very good. We have 2 questions remaining. So the Sheikh family popped at the top of the list now. So Sheikh family, finish it off for us. Brother Zia and Sister Asma, you could do the last 2.
Aina Baytut Tajiri.
Good. And
Where is the merchant's house?
yes.
Baytut Tajiri Amamal Masjidi.
Great. Fantastic.
أين بيت الطبيب؟ بيت الطبيب خلف المدرسة.
Fantastic.
The
Yes.
doctor's house is behind the school.
Fantastic. MashaAllah. Yep. Those are the 2 most important words of the lesson. Amam and khalf. Amama and khalfa. And we'll get into the rest of the exercise, inshallah. We'll try to finish the lesson next meeting, inshallah. Anybody have any other outstanding questions? Okay, fantastic work, everybody. I love the effort. I love the interaction. And inshallah, we'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.